let's be very clear about one thing. At the end of the day, the vindication of the rights of women require both of the things that this debate talks about. You need the legal framework that not just allows women to participate in public life, but actively corrects for like the past exclusion of them from like the socio-political process, in the status quo. These are the kind of things that you get from like, you know, lobbying a political party saying, hey, we will donate a lot of campaign money, we will actively canvass for you if you actually like, you know, vote for like these legislations that are necessary for women in parliament. But at the same time, yes, I would also agree with like what opposition probably thinks they're championing, in which you also need that larger cultural acceptance that women aren't just, you know, moody, emotional beings who are inherently less fair and rational than men. The kind of things that you think you will get from like, you know, reposting an Instagram story. And to a certain extent, both of these things are necessary and will happen under both sides of the house. Right? Like, I don't think it's very fair for opening opposition and closing opposition to say we are half sides, because we want one of these things. I don't think there exists a viable feminist movement that either excludes public campaign entirely or excludes lobbying entirely. So this is about prioritization, right? And these two things ultimately kind of fit into one another. The more women you have in public spaces, the more this cultural acceptance will happen. The more cultural acceptance happens, the more easily women can enter public spaces. So I think the way Kat builds this debate is by telling you that the process of getting into that more equal future is so much more certain due to this larger socio-political context of Indonesia. And even if we assume that both sides of the house can achieve this eventually, it will be so much more painful under the opposition side for the actual women who do that. Okay. First, the road to kembali. Let's just revisit all of the characterization that I already told you about Indonesia. This is a society where women still constantly has to apologize for being confrontational, for being emotional, for showing any vestige of negative emotion, where they feel the burden to protect the feelings of the powerful men around them because, well, it is just that patriarchal, right? But people like Fadli Zon can get away with saying that mass rapes didn't happen in 1998 and don't have to properly fucking apologize for it, right? And like, here's the thing. But the process of you actually dismantling the society is so much more painful if you do it confrontationally, because the discourse will necessarily have to involve a larger cultural conversation where, you know, people to whom this issue is less approximate to, you know, the actual very privileged men and women in CBD, the people who will not gain as much from the feminist movement actually winning will also be a part of the conversation, because you as the feminist movement, anyway, you as a feminist movement will tell them that, hey, you are part of a violent system that oppresses half of the population. You need to have this reckoning when they don't even have the foundational awareness that yes, they are part of the problem. Yes.
When feminist movement says, I will donate some money so you can propose our policies, Luhut Binsar Panjaitan will tell you what will give you 100 times the amount of you are going to donate just to not to.
Let's talk about policy, because you want to talk about what we can achieve in the next few years, right? Like, what policy shift? This becomes like one. Women become more present in places like the offices, the actual political palaces, etc. Because you probably will have quota like 30% minimum representation of your fraksi di DPR, right? You will have more BI initiative. You will have like things like as part of like corporate reports in the private sector. They will also ask about like, hey, what are your hiring practices for women? These are the kind of things that you get from internal lobbying by telling the HR department or by telling the government that, hey, these are the kind of metrics that actually matter, that you actually need to care about. You don't need people to actually internalize the fact that, hey, we need to actively correct for this if they are not part of like, you know, the actual agents who can enact this change. Right? The kind of bullshit that he talks about when he talks about Luhut Binsar Panjaitan is exactly the kind of things that you invite into the discourse. At the point in which you have to involve all of these stupid patriarchal politicians into the conversation, we want to exclude them. That is precisely, we want this internalized process. Right? Like, you will also have like broader feminization of the educational curriculum, for instance, you know, and this is a much better place for you to achieve that larger cultural shift, right? Because the educational institution is a place where the people in it kind of understand that they're there to internalize, absorb values, instead of like, you know, this larger society, Instagram, Facebook, the streets in front of Sarina, where you kind of want to have this conversation against people who, let's be honest, probably don't want to listen to you, right? That's the kind of things that we will achieve in the next few years, because probably a conversation with an older woman who is there in your workplace, but what is it actually like to live as a woman, to actually face these structural barriers, is probably going to do a lot more for the average ignorant man than like a Facebook post, or like a really well-written vindication feminist speech read in front of the back. But let's talk about certainty, right? I think becoming a feminist is quite hard actually, and this is why I think opening conversation for some of this debate, because they say you can just join this for free. No, standing up for something that society deems to be an outsider value. It's never free, it's never easy. Like for the woman, you have this triple burden of like, actually living under this burden of expectation of what you need to look like, how you need to behave. But you also need to like advocate for the fact that, hey, yes, I am oppressed actually, and I want to say this, but I also need to say this in a way that doesn't offend you, the one where you will quash all of my attempts to gain those rights back. That is simply unfair to say that, you need this. And just because, yes, it might be principally correct to say that this is the correct thing to do and we need to do this, but you also need to consider that not all women or not all allies have this privilege, this ability, this emotional capacity, this actual time and energy to put into the movement, because not everyone is privileged, yes.
Not all women is privileged. It means that if they cannot to give a capital, the things that they can give is energy, and this is at least given something that beneficial for the movement itself to share their fucking thing. So this is why I think that there is this understanding about the field.
That emotional labor is never free as a woman. You know perfectly well that is exactly the kind of oppressive talk that society demands from you at the point in which they oppress you. But even for the men, you also need to confront the fact that you are part of the problem. You need to understand that to a certain extent, the kind of opportunities that you have, the fact that society tolerates you for being so aggressive and taking up so much space all of the time, precisely just because you're a man. These are the kind of things that people whose lives are not so fundamentally affected by this will never understand. It is so much better for you to just exclude them for the time being. Just talk to the actual stakeholders, the actual people who can pass the legislation, the actual people who can implement all of these marginal changes, because that is our path towards that future, right? By gaining all of these smaller marginal improvements and by delaying that inevitable cultural confrontation, you allow this woman to enter more facets of Indonesian public life. You allow them to hold offices more often. You allow all of these men to sort of see that, yeah, there are women in their workplaces, that they remain single well into their 30s, 40s, and they are living perfectly happy lives. And that is how you gain the larger cultural acceptance. That is how you gain a society that eventually will understand that, they don't just become ghosts and monsters the moment they have their period for all of these reasons.